Sir, could you pretend to be my daddy just for one day? The bustling Manhattan corner market, usually a blur of hurried transactions, held its breath. Harold Blake, a man whose presence alone could silence a room, stood at the counter, his voice a cool, clipped instrument of precision. "Excuse me, I ordered still water, not sparkling," he stated, placing the offending bottle down with an air of finality. The cashier, fresh out of college, fumbled, stammering apologies that withered under his unwavering gaze. "You thought wrong, and now I'm late for a meeting," Harold added, adjusting his navy suit cuff. He didn't need to yell, his aura did all the shouting. Behind him, the line of impatient New Yorkers stirred, a low hum of frustration rising. But Harold didn't care. Errors, no matter how small, simply weren't acceptable. Then a voice, tiny yet startlingly clear, cut through the tense air. "Sir, could you pretend to be my daddy just for one day?" Harold turned. Standing a few feet away was a little girl, no older than 6, with golden curls framing an earnest, round face. Her eyes, huge and ocean blue, met his with terrifying sincerity. She wore a faded pink hoodie and mismatched neon socks. A young woman, breathless and flushed with panic, rushed forward. "Anna," she gasped, gently gripping the child's shoulders. "Sweetheart, you can't run off like that." The woman, her light blonde hair in a messy braid, looked up, her worn beige coat and scuffed sneakers speaking volumes about her exhaustion. Yet even beneath the fatigue, her features were striking. "I'm so sorry," she mumbled to Harold, pulling Anna back. She just says things sometimes. She didn't mean it." "Yes, I did," Anna interrupted, wide-eyed. "Tomorrow is Dad Day at school, and everyone's bringing their daddies." "I don't have one, but I thought maybe he could help." Harold stared. The water, the line, the meeting, all faded into the background. There was something about the little girl's unfiltered gaze that disarmed every carefully constructed wall he'd built. "I'm so sorry," the woman repeated, trying to guide Anna away. "We'll go, we're so sorry." "Wait," Harold said, and they both froze. He looked directly at the woman. "Your daughter," he said quietly. "What's her name?" "Hannah," she replied, hesitating. Anna Grace," he repeated, as if trying it on. I work at the library in the afternoons," Hannah added awkwardly, "and nights at the diner on 14th. We're not asking for anything, I promise." Her voice faltered. "She misses something she never got to have." Harold looked at Anna again. She stood beside her mother, small and impossibly hopeful, holding his gaze like it meant everything. Most children would have hidden by now. What happened to her father? He found himself asking. Hannah's voice was soft. "He passed away when she was 2, car accident, she doesn't remember him." The line behind them had gone silent. Harold took a breath. In his mind he saw his own reflection, in glass boardrooms, in empty apartments, in the echo of footsteps that never waited for anyone. He had spent years perfecting the art of walking away first, but now in a tiny corner store a little girl had asked him to stay, just for a day. "Tomorrow," he said slowly. "What time is Dad Day?" Hannah blinked. "Her school 10:00 a.m., but you don't have to. I'll be there," he said. Anna's eyes lit up like Christmas. "Really?" she whispered. Harold nodded once, "But just for one day." She beamed, and Hannah, too stunned to speak, watched as the man who looked like he owned the entire city crouched down to Anna's level. With a hint of something dangerously close to a smile, he said, "You'd better make a good schedule. I don't do chaos." Anna giggled, and Harold Blake, the coldest man on Wall Street, walked out of the store not with still water, but with a promise he never saw coming. The next morning the wind was sharp, a cold whisper against worn buildings. Hannah sat beside Harold on a bench outside Anna's school, her hands wrapped tightly around a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. "She doesn't really understand what it means, having a dad," Hannah said softly, breaking the silence. "She was just a baby when he passed, but kids notice things. They notice what's missing." Harold glanced down the sidewalk where Anna skipped along the edge of the curb, balancing like a tightrope walker, her tiny backpack bouncing. A pale yellow ribbon, a bit crooked, adorned her hair. "She's bright," he observed. "She's everything," Hannah replied. Harold said nothing, his hands folded neatly in his lap, watch glinting. "I didn't mean for her to put you on the spot yesterday," Hannah added. "She's a little different, special, but in ways that make her feel the gaps more than other kids do." "I don't do kids," Harold stated, blunt as ever. "I didn't think you did," Hannah answered, almost smiling, "which is why I'm still trying to figure out why you said yes." He turned to really look at her. She was tired, but something strong resonated within her, something that had weathered storms most people never encountered. I'm trying to figure that out myself, he said quietly. Just then Anna ran back, breathless and glowing. Come on, it's almost time. They said to bring our daddies into the playroom. Harold rose, straightening his coat. He hesitated only a second before offering his hand. Anna grabbed it without thinking, her tiny fingers wrapping around his. As they walked into the school, Hannah followed behind, watching the way her daughter looked up at Harold like he was someone she already trusted, like he had always been there. The classroom was a whirlwind of finger paints, cardboard forts, and construction paper name tags that read, "Daddy and Me." Harold stuck out like a sore thumb, 6 feet of business casual steel in a sea of sneakers and fleece jackets, but Anna didn't care. She pulled him through every station, giggling as he awkwardly tried to cut shapes and play hopscotch. The other parents eyed him curiously, a few recognizing him from the financial pages, but no one dared approach. Then came story time. The children curled up on beanbags while their fathers read. Anna climbed into Harold's lap, settling herself in as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and handed him a book with a crayon-drawn cover. "My daddy is a superhero." Harold hesitated. "Read it," Anna whispered. And so he did, his voice, so often used for boardroom strategy and investor calls, softening with each line. Halfway through, Anna leaned back against his chest and closed her eyes. "You feel safe," she murmured, "like a real daddy." Harold's chest tightened. He looked up and saw Hannah standing just outside the window, watching them, her eyes glistening. He looked down at the little girl in his arms. She didn't want money or empty promises. She just wanted a hand to hold, just for one day. And somehow Harold realized he wanted to be that hand, even if he didn't know why yet. That evening, as the city glowed in twilight and traffic murmured below, Harold did something he hadn't done in years. He made a dinner reservation for 3. No business partners, no assistants, no silent nods over steak and mergers. Just a little girl with golden curls, her quietly radiant mother, and the man who was starting to wonder if the walls he had built around himself were worth what they had cost. This is just to close the chapter, Harold had told himself when he invited them to wrap it all up neatly. But the moment Anna squealed with delight upon seeing him waiting outside the small bistro, Harold knew nothing about this was going to be neat. They sat at a corner table near the window. Soft music played, the lights dim and warm. Anna bounced in her seat, flipping through the kids' menu. "Do they have mac and cheese with the crunchy bits on top?" she asked. "They do now," Harold said with a half-smile, waving over the waiter. Hannah laughed softly, shaking her head. "You don't have to spoil her. Just for tonight," he said. "It's okay." As dinner arrived, the conversation flowed more easily than Harold expected. Anna chatted nonstop, telling him about her favorite picture books, the weird face her goldfish made, and how she planned to become a dolphin doctor and astronaut one day. But then, as dessert was served, it happened. Anna turned to him completely at ease and said, "Daddy, can I show you my drawing now?" Hannah froze. She opened her mouth to correct her, but Harold stopped her gently with a look and a smile. "Just for tonight," he repeated softly. Anna pulled a folded paper from her backpack and laid it on the table. It was a crayon drawing, uneven but full of joy. 3 stick figures beneath a yellow sun, one tall, one medium, one tiny, all smiling. Above it, in colorful block letters, she had written, "Me mommy and my daddy." Harold's throat tightened. He stared at the paper like it was a mirror to a life he had never dared imagine. "It's us," Anna said proudly. "I drew it after school." Harold couldn't speak. The silence that followed was heavy, not awkward, but sacred. Then slowly, Harold set his fork down and looked across the table. His voice was quiet, cracking on the edges. "I had a son," he said, "and a wife. Her name was Elise. Our boy's name was James. He had dark hair and big questions. He wanted to know how everything worked." Hannah looked at him gently, waiting. "I missed his first-class project, the one where dads come in and help build volcanoes," Harold continued. "I told him I'd make the next one, that I had work, always work." He looked out the window for a long beat, then back at them. "That morning, Elise begged me to go, but I told her I had a meeting I couldn't miss, so she took him alone." His hands clenched slowly on the table. They were hit by a drunk driver 2 blocks from the school. Hannah gasped quietly. Harold's voice dropped, barely audible. They passed instantly. Silence fell again, thicker now, raw with shared ache. "I was too late," he whispered. I missed every moment that mattered, and now I live with the silence they left behind. His eyes were red, his voice frayed, but no tears fell. He hadn't let himself cry since the funeral. Across the table, Hannah slowly reached out and placed her hand over his. She didn't say sorry, she didn't speak of fate or healing, she just held his hand like it was something sacred. "Maybe you missed those moments then," she said, her voice soft as a promise. "But you don't have to miss them now. Every child wants someone who tries. Anna doesn't need perfect, she needs present." Harold looked at her, stunned by the grace in her words. First time in years, someone saw the whole of him and didn't look away. Then he felt a small hand on his cheek. Anna had stood on her seat and leaned in, her tiny palm warm against his face. "If you were a bad daddy before," she whispered, "maybe now you can be a good one for me." His heart shattered. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of something irreplaceable. "I don't deserve you," he choked out. Anna's voice was no louder than a breath, "but I picked you anyway." And in that moment, the past didn't disappear, but it stopped winning. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. Hannah's hands trembled as she folded her apron and placed it on the counter. The manager of the diner, a balding man with a clipboard and a permanent scowl, refused to meet her eyes. "I don't want any drama," he said flatly, "but we can't have employees entangled with corporate figures, especially not with the company that owns this building." Hannah's heart sank. "I didn't even know until recently that he was," he cut her off. "You brought him here, had lunch with him in uniform. Customers talk. Someone upstairs heard. It's not a good look. They think you're trying to work an angle." "I wasn't," she said, almost pleading. "I'd never, I'm sure," he said, "but perception is everything." And that was that. Hours later, Hannah sat on a worn bench at the bus stop, her coat wrapped tightly around her, Anna nestled against her side. The little girl didn't understand why her mother's hands shook or why she hadn't spoken for 15 minutes straight. She just knew something was wrong. "Mommy," Anna whispered, "are we in trouble?" "No, baby," Hannah choked out, "not trouble, just tired." Her eyes stung, her head ached, and all she could think was how fast everything good slipped away the moment she dared to believe it might stay. Then headlights. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb, the back door opening before the engine even cut. Harold stepped out. He looked around once, then saw them huddled together under a flickering street lamp. Hannah looked up, startled, wiping her face quickly. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice raw, but he didn't answer her. Instead, he walked straight to Anna, knelt down on the pavement, and met her eyes. His voice was low, fierce with emotion. "No one gets to hurt your mommy, not while I'm here." Hannah blinked, surprised, then smiled slowly, sweetly, and wrapped her arms around his neck. Hannah stared at them, her heart thundering in her chest. "She lost her job," Harold said, looking up at her, "because of me." "It's not your fault," Hannah whispered. "Yes, it is," he said, standing, "and I don't intend to let it stay that way." 2 days later, Hannah walked into the offices of the Blake Foundation, a quiet but powerful philanthropic branch of Harold's company. She had barely crossed the threshold when she heard it, tiny feet sprinting down the hall. "Daddy." Anna's voice rang out like sunshine. Harold turned just in time to catch her as she jumped into his arms. She clung to him like he was her whole world. "Did you miss your little girl, Daddy?" Harold held her close, smiling softly. "I always do." Everyone in the lobby watched, but no one said a word. The man they had only known as ruthless, calculated Harold Blake was something else entirely in that moment. He sat Anna down, then turned to Hannah. "I want you here," he said, "as my personal assistant for the foundation. I need someone who gives a DMN about people, and you've never stopped giving, even when it cost you." Hannah swallowed hard. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity," he said. "It's a second chance for both of us." She looked at Anna, still clutching his hand, and realized something deep and true. Maybe second chances didn't come wrapped in perfection, but they came wrapped in presence, and that was enough. It happened gradually, like spring slipping into the room after a long, brutal winter. They never had a conversation about it, never declared a new beginning or crossed any official line. But somehow, somewhere between school drop-offs and late dinners, bedtime stories and grocery runs, the three of them became something more than coincidence. They became a family. Harold started leaving work early, not because he had to, but because he wanted to read to Anna before bed. He brought home books about space and animals and silly monsters who brushed their teeth. He did voices, bad ones, but Anna loved them. Every night she climbed onto his lap, curled against his chest, and whispered, "One more page, Daddy." And every night he said, "Yes." Hannah watched from the doorway, arms crossed over her chest, a quiet smile pulling at her lips. She tried not to read into it, tried not to fall into something she couldn't control, but she was already falling. She loved the way Harold tied Anna's shoes too tightly and had to redo them twice. She loved the way he carried a spare hair tie in his coat pocket, just in case. She loved the way he looked at her like he saw her, not just as a single mother or a burden, but as someone with worth. And that terrified her because she had known hope before, and she had known what it felt like when it slipped through her fingers. One Friday evening, Anna came home from school unusually quiet. She pushed away her dinner, then leaned against Harold on the couch, her face warm and pale. "Sweetheart," Hannah knelt beside her. "What's wrong?" "My tummy hurts," Anna whispered. An hour later, she had a fever of 103. Hannah panicked, running cold cloths over her daughter's forehead, calling the pediatrician, checking symptoms. Harold stayed calm until Anna began to cry in her sleep, and then he wasn't calm anymore. He sat beside her bed, holding her hand, brushing her damp curls back from her face. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe, I've got you." But then Anna stirred, her voice a broken whimper. "Don't leave me too, Daddy." Harold froze, every part of him shattered at once. He hadn't cried in years, not at the funeral, not in the months after, but now as that tiny voice pierced through the dark, he broke. Tears spilled silently down his cheeks as he leaned in and gathered her into his arms. She was burning up, her little body trembling. He held her close, rocking her gently. "I'm here," he choked out. "I'm not going anywhere, I promise." He stayed like that the whole night, didn't move, didn't sleep, just held her, whispering comfort until her fever broke at dawn. When Hannah entered the room the next morning, she found them still on the rocking chair, Anna curled up sleeping peacefully, and Harold broken and healing all at once. His eyes were red, his shirt was soaked with sweat and tears, but his arms were steady. He looked up at Hannah, something raw and wordless in his face, and she knew he had finally let himself feel it, not just grief, but love, real, terrifying, beautiful love, and she knew in that moment none of them would ever be the same again. They hadn't seen him in years. Daniel Marks, Hannah's brother-in-law, the only living relative from her late husband's side, showed up on a Sunday morning without warning, a stern expression and a suit too stiff for sincerity. "I heard you're letting some CEO play house with my niece," he said coldly, standing on their porch. "That's not family, Hannah, that's convenience." Hannah stood frozen, her arms instinctively shielding the door behind her. "You've never even met her," she said quietly. "Which is exactly why I want to change that. I'm filing for legal guardianship. You think a billionaire can give her what she really needs? Stability, morals," he sneered. "You're not thinking clearly, you're just desperate." Harold stood behind her, silent, his fists clenched at his sides. Hannah's heart raced, her world suddenly tipping. She had fought for so long to build something gentle, something safe, and now someone from a past she had buried was trying to rip it away. The courtroom was cold, far colder than the snow-covered streets outside. Rows of wooden benches stood rigid and silent, like the people sitting on them. The judge sat high above, robed in black, eyes unreadable as he shuffled through the case file. At the front, little Anna sat beside Harold, her tiny fingers locked tightly around his hand. Her feet dangled above the floor, unable to reach, but her presence filled the space as if she were the tallest person in the room. Across from them sat Daniel Marks, rigid, polished, and proud. He leaned forward at the table, eyes sharp with purpose. "This man," Daniel said, motioning toward Harold, "is not family. He is a temporary distraction, a wealthy outsider who has known this child for weeks, months. I want what's best for Anna, and what's best for her is blood, stability, not a fantasy built on fairy tales." Murmurs fluttered through the crowd. The judge raised a hand. "And does love matter in this court, Mr. Marks?" Daniel hesitated, the question catching him off guard. "Of course it does, but love doesn't negate responsibility or biology." The judge nodded thoughtfully. Then came a sound, soft, barely audible at first, a chair shifting, a small figure rising. Anna. She stood from the witness bench, a little unsteady on her feet, but burning with determination. She clutched Harold's hand even tighter as she walked to the center of the room, all eyes following her. The bailiff took a step forward, uncertain, but the judge motioned for silence. Anna stopped in front of the bench and looked up. "My name is Anna Grace," she said, voice trembling but clear, "and I already have a daddy." Gasps broke out behind her. Daniel blinked, stunned. He reads to me every night, Anna continued, her chin lifting slightly. He never yells. He makes mommy smile. He holds my hand when I'm scared, and he never makes me feel small. The courtroom went silent. Anna turned toward Harold. I don't want a new one, she said. I already picked him. Harold blinked hard, the sting of tears rising in his eyes. The judge leaned back slowly, exhaled, and after a long moment said with quiet authority, in light of the emotional testimony, the demonstrable bond between the child and Mr. Blake, and the absence of a stable prior relationship with Mr. Marks, this court denies the petition for guardianship. A sharp breath escaped Hannah's lips, her hand flying to her mouth. Anna ran back to Harold and threw her arms around him, her head pressing against his chest. And for the first time, Harold didn't feel like a man pretending to protect a child. He felt like a father, fully, finally, forever. The letter came a week later, cream-colored paper, a bold seal in the corner. Hannah held it in trembling hands, her eyes scanning the words again and again. A research position at one of the top developmental institutes in Boston. Everything she had once dreamed of back in college, before Anna, before the struggle, before Harold. She stood in the kitchen, staring out the frosted window, the city outside dusted in soft, falling snow. She didn't hear him at first, just the quiet creak of the hardwood as Harold stepped behind her. You got it, he said gently. She nodded, but her voice was low. I'm not going, he frowned. Why? Because it's too far. Anna's happy you're here. This, she gestured to the life they'd built. This matters more. Harold walked closer, his voice firm but kind. Hannah, you don't give up dreams, you bring them with you. She turned to him, eyes shining. But what if I lose what we have? Harold didn't hesitate. He took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers like it was instinct. Then it wasn't real enough to begin with, he said, but I believe it is. She looked at him, the same man who once stood in a corner store like he owned the world, now standing before her like she was his entire world. And this time, she didn't run from hope.